Assuming your Office 365 data is automatically backed up can feel a lot like this.
And once again, ladies and gentlemen,
Backing up Office 365 data with Veeam feels like this. So back it up with Veeam.
All right. So shall we just get started then?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. Welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. The title of this talk is PowerShell for Power Apps and Power Automate. Please visit or please join M365 Chicago in supporting the Chicago Public Schools through the Children First Fund. You can use this link for the direct donation. And we would like to thank all our sponsors, because without the support of sponsors, the community conferences like this cannot succeed, or we cannot host them. So make sure you visit their channels in the community tenant, and also check out their information so they can come back again for sponsors event like this in future. And this is the link you can use to provide the feedback. The feedback about the conference, and also the feedback about the speakers as well. Who am I? My name is Prashant Bhoyar. I was born and raised in India, came to United States in 2007 for studies. I'm University of Maryland College Park alumni. I co-authored a book, PowerShell for Office 365. I also acted as a technical reviewer for the book Pro SharePoint 2013 Administration. I am from Washington, D.C. area, and pre-COVID-19 pandemic, we used to organize a lot of in-person conferences in the Washington, D.C. Area. And those conferences used to focus on Microsoft 365, Power Platform, and also big data, SQL, and Azure AI as well. And if you are in post-COVID-19 pandemic, we have converted all our conferences to virtual only. So if you are interested in joining us for upcoming virtual conferences, please check us out on meetup.com. We use meetup.com exclusively to publish the latest and greatest information about the upcoming conferences. So we have two conferences coming up. One is going to be on 25th of June, and second is going to be on 12th of November. The first one is going to focus on AI, especially on Microsoft AI offerings, and the second one is on Azure Data and AI. And you can find the registration links by going to the meetup.com. I am recipient of Antarctic Service Medal, and since 2017, I'm also recipient of Microsoft MVP Award. Now, those of you who are not familiar with this award, I don't work for Microsoft. It's just the additional recognition that Microsoft gives out to the folks who does technical contributions in various categories. And these technical contributions can be in the form of speaking at the conferences, writing books, writing blog posts, creating training videos and posting them for free on streaming platforms like YouTube or Twitch, and also providing direct feedback to the Microsoft product group, or answering people's questions or various public forums. And this award is only valid for 12 months or 1 year. And after 12 months, you have to apply for renewal. And during the renewal process, then Microsoft checks your contributions from previous 12 months and the contributions are good enough, then you get renewed for additional year. So for first couple of years, I was an MVP in Office 365 apps and services, especially SharePoint. And since 2019, I changed my category to AI. Now, you may be wondering why AI MVP is speaking about the PowerShell for Power Apps and Power Automate. The reason is I still use a lot of services in Microsoft ecosystem, especially related to the Microsoft 365, Power Platform, and Azure. And I do that as part of my job, where I work as a senior solution architect with Witham. Witham is an advisory tax and accounting firm, and we have offices throughout the US and in India as well. And I focus mostly on intelligent business process automation, where I use Power Platform and Microsoft 365 and Azure AI and bots a lot. And I work at Witham's Washington, D.C. office. So these are some of the things we have. We have 2 Microsoft MVPs on the staff. We have done 100+ Microsoft Cloud deployments. We have 50 plus consultants dedicated to Microsoft ecosystem only, and we are providing services in Microsoft ecosystem from last 17 years. And these are some of the capabilities that we have in the group that I work for. As I mentioned, do check us out on meetup.com if you would like to join us for upcoming free conferences. So this is going to be the agenda. This is going to be a 100 level session. So if you haven't used PowerShell to manage Power Apps or Power Automate, then this session is for you. We will cover the basics of it, how to get started, what are some of the tools you need, and then we will have lots of demos. So we'll talk about what is PowerShell for Power Apps and Power Automate, why we should use it, and then how to get started. We'll have demos, best practices, key takeaways. And since we are using Teams meeting, feel free to post your questions in the chat window, or you can also use that feature, raise your hand in the Teams meeting. I'm not sure if you are allowed to unmute, but if you are allowed to unmute yourself, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask questions at any time. I'm using 2 monitors here, so I should be able to monitor the chat window. And Tom is also here to help us out in case if I miss any of the questions, he will definitely help us to remind that. So I prefer the session to be interactive, so feel free to ask as many questions as possible. So Microsoft Power Platform. Microsoft Power Platform is a low-code platform that spans across Office 365, Azure, Dynamics 365, and standalone applications. And the first product in this group was the Power BI. And then later on, during the spring of 2016, Microsoft announced Power Apps and Power Automate together. And during the Ignite of 2019, which was October, November in 2019, Microsoft also announced about Power Virtual Agent, which we can use to create chatbots, like no-code chatbots. So as far as PowerShell is concerned, we only have modules available for Power Apps and Power Automate. We don't have any modules for Power BI and Power Virtual Agents yet. So in this talk, we'll be only focusing on PowerShell modules for Power Apps and Power Automate. Now, when it comes to the management of Power Apps and Power Automate, you have 2 options. You can use the admin center using the browser or use the PowerShell. Now, most of us are already familiar with the admin center. You may have already used it to manage some of the flows or some of the apps in your tenant. But we will talk about why it's good to have a working knowledge of PowerShell in case you would like to do some advanced stuff or something peculiar which is not available directly in the admin center. So when it comes to the Power Automate Admin Center, you can either go to that by going to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, or you can just go to admin.flow.microsoft.com, or you can just go to the regular Flow URL, which is flow.microsoft.com, and in the settings on the top right corner, click on Admin Center. So these are the 3 ways where you can go to the Power Automate Admin Center. It helps you to manage the data policies, the environments, the user licenses where we can just view the licenses, the quotas, and all other flows within your organization. When it comes to the Power Apps Admin Center, you can go to the Power Apps Admin Center via Microsoft 365 Admin Center, or you can go to admin.powerapps.com, or you can go to mech.powerapps.com, which many of you are familiar with if you have created Power Apps in the past. And there on the top right corner, you can click on settings, and then from there you can go to the admin center. Just like Power Automate, Power Apps Admin Center help us to manage data policies, environments, user licenses, quotas, and all, sorry, there's a typo here, all the apps within your organization. Now, what is PowerShell for Power Apps and Power Automate? It's a management tool that complements the admin center. And we can use PowerShell to quickly manage Power Apps, Power Automate. And now let's see, like, if we already have admin center as part of the user interface, then why we should even bother about learning about PowerShell, right? Like what's there in it that compel me to learn it. So PowerShell can help you to reveal additional information that you cannot see within the admin center. And there are some features that you can only configure using PowerShell. And PowerShell is generally really good when it comes to performing a bulk operation. Now, a couple of demos that I will be showing you in this particular talk is we'll be performing a bulk operation. And during the demo, I'll tell you if I don't use PowerShell, then probably the amount of time I had to take to do that operation will be much longer as compared to what it takes to do that with PowerShell. And PowerShell is also great at filtering the data. PowerShell allows us to automate a repetitive task. It also helps us to print and save the data, and also lets you manage Power Automate and Power Apps. And one of the key feature of using PowerShell is, so some of the advanced capabilities that comes with the admin center, you need some premium licenses for that. However, if you go with PowerShell, you don't need to have premium licenses for Power Apps or Power Automate, and you can still implement some of the advanced features. And this is like the analogy I typically give to the people who are like when we have to compare admin center versus PowerShell. So admin center is like using public transportation. Let's say if you had to go from, since I'm from Washington, D.C., I can give you an example. If I had to go from where I live to Reagan National Airport, or if I had to see the White House, then if I use the public transportation, then what I had to do is I had to walk to a bus stop. From there, I had to take a bus that goes to a metro station. And then from there, I had to catch a train that goes closer to the Washington, D.C. And from there, then I have to drop and then take a walk to the White House. Whereas if I compare that with driving my own car, then I have the full luxury. I can just start my journey right from my house, and I can park right where the parking lot is available in the White House. So I have more flexibility. I can navigate around and however, it comes with more responsibility because now I am in charge of driving the car versus in public transportation. As long as you board the right train, it's a transportation agency's responsibility to make you to take you to the right destination. Whereas when you're driving your own car, you have to take care of pretty much everything. However, the number one thing that you get with the car is you have more flexibility. And there are some areas where you cannot really easily use public transportation. You can use your own car. So same thing, same concept is there with PowerShell. Like PowerShell will let you do a lot of things which the admin center won't allow you to do. And also you will have more convenience. Of course, you will have more responsibility now, and you have to be careful what kind of commandlets you're executing, and you should know what these commandlets are doing. So how to use the PowerShell for Power Apps and Power Automate? Since Power Apps and Power Automate are hosted by Microsoft, we don't have direct access to the infrastructure where these two services are hosted. That means we need to install some remote management tools to use PowerShell. There are two separate models available to us for makers. Makers means the people who are professionals who are responsible for creating Power Automate or creating the apps. The model for them is called Microsoft.PowerApps.PowerShell. And for the administrator, the model name is Microsoft.PowerApps.Administration.PowerShell. Now you may be wondering, the model name only constitutes Power Apps. However, the same model also includes the commandlets for Power Automate. So we only have one module, and it includes the commandlets for Power Apps as well as Power Automate. And the administrator module is for more people who are administrators to perform some administrator level to tenant level operations. So when it comes to the prerequisite, if you would like to use PowerShell and if you would like to use Power Apps commandlet for app creators, you need to have a valid Power Apps and Power Automate license. Let's say if I'm a guest user, I will not be able to use that. Or if I'm a user in the tenant and if I don't have valid Power Apps and Power Automate license, I will not be able to use the PowerShell commandlets for the makers. And the key thing you have to remember is the access to the assets or the resources is limited to the apps or flows that are shared with you or you have created. That means, let's say if Tom is also part of my tenant, and if Tom created a flow or Tom created an app, and if that app is not shared with me, I will not able to access that app or I will not able to access that flow using PowerShell. Now, when it comes to the Power Apps commandlet for administrators, following users with these roles can use that. So you can be a global administrator, you can be an Azure Active Directory global admin, or you can be a Dynamics 365 service administrator. So you need to be part of either of three groups to be able to use the administrative commandlets for Power Apps and Power Automate. And there is also one thing you have to keep in mind is before you start using PowerShell, you have to use the browser and logging to the Power Apps or Power Automate Admin Center at least once. If you don't do that, then you will not be able to use the PowerShell modules. So now let's talk about the typical patterns that you will see with the PowerShell commandlets. So if you are a maker, then the typical commandlet will be the verb hyphen power app and then noun. For example, and if you're an administrator, then the syntax will be or the pattern will be verb hyphen admin power app and the noun. For example, for the maker, it's a get hyphen power app or get power app connection, get admin power app environment role assignment. Please note, few commandlets don't follow these patterns. For example, get tenant setting. So this particular commandlet does not follow the pattern that we have seen here. So, but the exception for that is very few. But generally, if you keep this pattern in mind, you should be able to guess a lot of PowerShell commandlets. Second is remove allowed consent plans. Same thing with the Power Automate. So the Power Automate commandlets still include flow because many of you already know the earlier name of this particular service was Microsoft Flow, and recently Microsoft rebranded it as a Power Automate. However, in a lot of documentation or in a lot of things where you see Microsoft hasn't changed the name from Flow to Power Automate. And one of this location is PowerShell, where if you look at the PowerShell commandlets, you'll be still seeing the name as Flow instead of Power Automate. And the typical pattern will be verb hyphen flow and the noun. And for administrator, it will be verb hyphen admin flow and the noun. And for example, get flow owner role, get admin flow owner role. And just like Power Apps, we have few commandlets where they will not follow this pattern. However, the commandlet that don't follow this pattern, the list is very small there. So let's say if you are totally new and you install these two modules on your machine, then if you would like to find out all the available commands, you have two options. You can either go to the Microsoft documentation and find out all the available commandlets there, or you can open the PowerShell command prompt and you just type this particular command where any commandlet that has Power App in it will get displayed. Now, if you install any other module, let's say a module for PNP PowerShell or a module for, let's say, ISV, and if those modules also constitute a commandlet with name Power App, which has name Power App, then those also will get displayed in the screen. Just keep that in mind. Same thing you can do with the flow as well. And if you would like to get help, then this is typical syntax with any commandlets available in PowerShell. You just type get help first, and then the name of the commandlet that you're trying to get help for. And you can see the help section directly into the PowerShell window. You don't have to go to the browser for that. And there are various ways you can get the help. You can get help and the name of the commandlet and hyphen detailed or hyphen full. And I would like to pause and see if anyone has any questions or any comments so far. All right, I don't see any question. All right. So if you would like to go and find out the additional documentation from Microsoft, you can go to this particular link. And these are some of the capabilities are available as part of the user or maker commandlets, where we can read environments, we can read, update and delete Canvas app, we can read, update, delete Canvas app permission, we can read and delete connections, we can read, update, delete connection permissions, we can read and delete a custom connector. When it comes to the PowerShell commandlets for Power Apps, and when it comes to the tenant administration capabilities, these are some of the things we can do with PowerShell. One is read and delete environments, read, update, delete environment permission, read, update, remove, recover Canvas apps, read and delete connections, read, update and delete connection permissions, read and delete custom connectors, read, update and delete custom connector permissions, read a user's Power App user setting, user app setting and notification, and create, read and update, delete data loss prevention policies for your organization. Now, some of these capabilities that are mentioned here, if you have to perform a bulk operation, for example, if you had to read, update and delete a connection permission, or you had to, let's say, read or delete a connection, those are the things if you had to perform in bulk. Instead of using the admin center, you can perform those tasks very quickly and easily using the PowerShell commandlets. When it comes to the Power Automate, we can do the similar things. When it comes to the maker capabilities, we can read environments, we can read, update and delete a flow. We can read, update and delete a flow permission. We can read and respond to flow approvals, which is really good. We can read and delete connections. We can read, update and delete connection permissions. We can read, delete custom connectors. One of the demo that I will be showing you today is how you can update the flow permission. And this one part comes particularly handy, especially if let's say a team member has created a flows in your organization or apps, let's say using Power App. However, he or she forgets to share that with other team members and he is on vacation or he or she does not work for your firm anymore. In that case, if someone would like to take the access of those, then either you have to work with the tenant admin, and when it comes to the tenant admin, then they have two options. They can either go to the UI and do that, or they can just use the PowerShell where this run they have to just run the PowerShell once, and that PowerShell will give, let's say, a specific user the owner access to the required flows or required apps. When it comes to the tenant administration, we can read and delete environments. We can read, update, delete environment permission, read, update and delete flows, read and delete connection, read, update and delete connection permissions, read, delete custom connectors, read, update, delete custom connector permissions, and also we can read and delete Microsoft Flow user detail settings. And we can also create organizations data loss prevention policies as well. Now with that, we are moving to the demo section now. And feel free to ask any question in the chat window or just unmute yourself, ask the question, or just use the feature raise your hand in the Teams. So first thing first, what I will be doing is I will be starting the PowerShell as an administrator. And let me minimize this a bit so that the subtitles are still visible. And what we will be doing is, so the first thing first, since you need to first install the two modules, then the first module is for the administration, and you have to use this commandlet to install that. I'm not gonna go and install this because I have already installed this module. And the second one is for the makers, and the command to install that is this one. So for example, if you are just a maker, then you don't need to install the administrative commandlet administrative module, because since you don't have permission, there is no need for you to install that. Let's say if your job is just to create the flows or create the Power App, then the second module for the maker is sufficient for you. Since both Power App and Power Automate is hosted by Microsoft and we can only use remote management, the first thing we need to do is we need to use the commandlet to make the connection to the Power Apps and Power Apps and infrastructure. And the way we do that is using this particular commandlet. So we have the same commandlet for both Power Apps and Flow, which is add-Power Apps account. And there are multiple ways where you do that. If I don't provide any credentials, then a login prompt will appear and I have to use my credentials. And once I provide the credentials, then then I will be making a connection to the infrastructure where Power Apps and Power Automate is hosted. And after this, I can then execute the commandlets, and depending on my access, I'll be getting the information back. Now, let's say if you are starting totally new and you need to find out all the available commandlets in this particular machine that you're using. So what you can do is you can use this particular option get command, and here I will just type Power App. And these are the commandlets that are there in my machine. And some of the commandlets may be from the Power Apps module. Some of the commandlets may be from a different module if I have that installed on my machine. Same thing I can do with the flow as well. And as you can see, some of the commandlets are coming from the Power Apps module, but there are some which are coming from a different module, like this one. So these two are coming from the PNB module. This one is coming from the ShareGate. So that's why you have to keep in mind which particular module this commandlet belong to, because this get command will do a search on the string that you have passed, and it will just show you all the commandlets that are available on that particular machine. Now, let's say you would like to know more about a particular commandlet, and you have to find out how to use that. So you have two options. You can either go to the browser and read the Microsoft documentation. But if you are like me and if you would like to lose the context and you would like to get the information as much as possible within the PowerShell window itself, then what you can do is you can use this commandlet get help, and then whatever the name of the commandlet is. For example, get Power App. So here I will be getting the help information on this particular commandlet and how to use that. Like this is the name of the commandlet is, this is the synopsis, and this is the syntax that I will be using. However, if you would like to use some more information, these are the options I have available. So I can just go and just type examples. And here I'll be getting how to use this commandlet with examples right in the PowerShell window. I can also type, let's say, detailed. And here I'll be getting the detailed information. And if I would like to see everything that is available as part of the help, then I just go and add the parameter full. And this will tell me everything, like the detailed information that you typically find on the Microsoft documentation. Any questions or any comments so far? All right, I don't see any. All right. Now the next commandlet that we'll be using is we would be displaying all the flows that I have access to. First, I'll be displaying all the Power Apps, and then I'll be displaying all the flows. So first, let's do for the Power App, and the commandlet for that is get Power App. And here I'm not specifying anything, any parameter at all. So that means it will be displaying all the apps that are there in this particular tenant where I have or my account has access to. And you can see here there is a bunch of apps are there. And the two important things we have to note is the app name, which is the unique identifier for your app. And the second is the display name. And typically, whether it's in PowerShell or whether you are using, let's say, custom code using client-side language or C#, always look for the unique identifiers to reference to a particular app or flow. So in this case, we will be relying on app name when it comes to Power App. And when it comes to the flow, it will be relying on a flow name. But here you'll see the information about this particular flow or this particular Power App, like, OK, what's the display name, when it was created, and what's the environment it belongs to. And what's the type is, whether it's a classic Canva app or whether it's a model-driven app or different thing. Same thing. And let's say if I'm not interested in additional information, I just would like to see app name and display name. Then what I can do is I can apply the pipe, and I can just do select object and app name and and display name. And if the syntax is correct, then I will be getting all the Power Apps which are there in my tenant where I have access to. And in the first column, I'm getting the its unique identifier or app name, and the second one I'm getting the display name. Now let's see the same commandlet for the flow. So if I do a get flow, and if I don't specify any parameter, then it will show me all the flows that are there in this particular tenant where I have access to. And just like the Power App, the unique name will be flow name, which is the unique identifier, and the display name will be the name that you have given and whether this flow is enabled or not and all other information. And if I have to narrow down on the information that is getting displayed, then what I can do is just like the Power App here, I will be applying the pipe and just do flow name and display name. And here the list of all the flows that I have access to are displayed here. So here I have the flow name and which is unique identifier, and here I have the display name. Any questions or any comments so far before we go to the next section of the demo? All right, I take that as a no. So the next thing what we're going to do is, so I will give you an example of the recent scenario that happened with us. So we got engaged with a new client and that client had a lot of flows and Power Apps in their tenant. However, their entire IT team left. Something happened and the entire IT team who built those flows or Power Apps were no longer in that firm. And then we came in and we had to fix some issues with it. Now, the IT people over there didn't have any clue how many flows are there, what these flows are doing, how many Power Apps there, what kind of functionality those Power Apps do. And the administrator they had, the global administrator, he was more familiar with the infrastructure side than how the Power Apps or Power Automate work. And the number one challenge that we had initially was, okay, we are here to help, but first we need to get access to all the flows and Power Apps. Now we have two options there. Either we can work with the admin, tenant admin, and then use the admin center and get the access, or we can use the PowerShell and quickly give us the access, the required access to all the flows and Power Apps. Of course, we had to run that PowerShell script using the account of tenant admin, but we used the route of PowerShell because that was quick and we got access within less than 2 hours. So here in the next demo, what I will do is I will show you a script that we have created. And this script is also available on GitHub in case you would like to reference this in future. So let me quickly go ahead and grab the URL for you and paste that in the chat window. So you can look. Let me go to the formatting. Because if I directly copy this from the deck, the Teams normally doesn't copy the formatting as well. All right, so you can download the script from here, but the basic implementation of the script is very, very simple. So I'll be walking you through one by one. So to use this script, you need to have these 3 modules. First module is for the administration commandlet, second is for the maker, and third one is for the Azure AD. And I will tell you like why we need the model for Azure AD. Then on line number 37, you have to specify the email address of the user who would like the email address of the user you would like to add as owner to the existing flows. Because this script is for the flows, we have another script for Power Apps. Then we have to make the connection to our Microsoft Flow infrastructure, and the command that we use for that is add Power Apps account. And we also make the connection to the Azure AD, and the command that we use for that is connect Azure AD. Then we get the environment information and the environment. So those of you who are not familiar with environment, so you can have multiple environments in Power Platform. And by default, every tenant gets a default environment. And if you don't create a new environment, all the flows and Power Apps you create get stored in that environment. However, some organizations use multiple environments. And if you would like to access any flow or Power App from a specific environment, you have to first get access to that particular environment. And on line number 46, what we are doing is we are getting access to the default environment. But let's say if your flows are in a different environment, you just have to get the name of that environment and use that in this particular commandlet here. Then we are getting the user ID, which is the unique identifier or the UPN of the user that we are using. Not UPN, the unique identifier, because we need that as part of one of the parameters of the commandlet that we have. And in case you don't want to use the Azure AD commandlets, there is an easy way to find the user ID by just going to the Azure Active Directory. So in case you don't want to use that, you can manually find out what's the unique user ID for a user is by just going to the Azure Active Directories. For that, just go to portal.azure.com and go to Azure Active Directory. Go to I would like to see all. I don't want to see the create. Let me see. All right, I want to see all the users. And here, if I click on this user, then you will see this is the user ID that is there or unique identifier for this particular user. So you can directly copy this, or you can use the PowerShell commandlets for Azure AD to get that. And then the next thing what we are doing is on line number 54, we are using this commandlet get admin flow. And you need to be a global administrator, or you need to be a Dynamics 365 administrator, service administrator, or you need to be Azure AD global administrator, Azure global administrator to use this commandlet. And what this will do is it will give you all the flows that are there in that particular environment. And here we are just interested in getting the name, which is the unique identifier of the flow, and the display name. And once we got that, we are storing that in a collection called flows. And starting line number 55, we are iterating through one by one from that collection. And for each flow, we are using this commandlet set admin flow owner rule. And here these are the parameters we need to pass. We need to pass the user ID of the user that we would like to add as an owner, and then what kind of permission you would like to add, whether it's a read permission or edit permission, and then the name or the unique name for the flow, and the environment where that flow exists. That's it, like very simple. So basically you need three information: the unique user ID of the user, then the unique name of or unique name of your flow, which is flow name, and also the environment where that flow is located. And if this commandlet is successful, then that particular user will get added as an owner in the flow. And the script will continue doing that for one by one. So within a matter of minutes, like you can add a user to all the flows as an owner. So this is really useful script that you can have, especially if you are working on a totally new environment, or your team member forgot to add you or other users as an owner, and all the flows only he or she has access to. So before I execute this, any questions or any comments so far? Okay, I take that as a no. So what I'll be doing is I'll be going to the flow UI and quickly. So let's click on the cloud flows here. So there are no cloud flows here. I'll be quickly going here and create. No, I just want to create a blank instant cloud flow. Okay, let's call it as SPA Chicago 1. and it's a manual trigger flow. Let's create it. All right, so flow is not behaving that well, so let's go ahead and create again. So let's call it as instant cloud flow. Let's call it as SPS Chicago 2021 and manual trigger create. All right, so the flow has been created. Let's click. Let's add a step where we're just going to send an email. Office 65 Outlook and send an email. And I'll be just sending email to myself. And please ignore. And I'll be coming to this why we are creating a brand new flow here. So click save. All right, the flow has been saved. Now let's go back to my cloud flows here. If I go to the flows here and if I refresh this, then this flow is listed under cloud flows. And if you look at it, only I am the owner of this flow. And this is really bad practice, especially if I'm creating a flow which is for work and not for my personal automation. Then the best practice is you should share this flow with other team members. Now, what I'll be doing is I'll be running this script, and what this script will do is it will go through each and every flow and it will add this particular user as an owner. So let's go ahead and run this. And it owns the flows. The first thing is, since I had to make the connection to the flow infrastructure, then I had to make the connection to the Azure AD. That's why I'm getting the prompt again. And once it is done, then it will start iterating through all the flows that are there, and then it will start adding that particular user as an owner. If that user is already an owner in the existing flows, don't worry, it will just move on to the next flow, and nothing will happen. And there will be some flows or some apps or some flows where you see a weird error, and I will explain you why that error is coming. But let first this flow, this particular PowerShell script finish. And then we can confirm whether the flow we just created, now we have a new additional owner there. While the script is running, let me know if you have any questions or any comments so far. Okay, the script is done. Now let's go back to our UI and let's refresh this. And the moment I refresh this particular flow should be gone under cloud flows, and it should be there with shared with me. Because every time you share a flow with someone, it is no longer available under cloud flows. It will be available under shared with me. So let me refresh this. So the flow is gone. Now, if I expand this, I will see this particular flow here. And if I click on this and under owner, I will see the additional account that we just added. Now, and when it comes to sharing the flows, depending on the trigger, you have two options. You can either share with the individual user or you can share with the group. However, if your flow is using SharePoint as a trigger, and if that flow is connected to a SharePoint list, then you can also add that particular SharePoint list as an owner as well. For example, This one is tied up with the SharePoint list. And if I click and edit, I see an additional option here along with users and group. If I click on SharePoint, then I can also share this flow with this particular list or library. And the users that are there who has access to that list and library will automatically get access to this flow as well. This is a neat way of sharing the flows, especially if your flow is connected to the SharePoint. Now, similar example is also a script is also available with for Power Apps. Now, you may be wondering why I have two different scripts. The reason is the commandlets that you use to get all the flows or all the Power Apps are different. And the commandlets that you use to add the admin, the owner role are different in Power Apps and Power Automate. So this one is for Power Apps, and I will be posting this into the same link GitHub like later in the after this particular talk. Unfortunately, I don't have that right now, but the concept is the same. Only difference is we'll be using the commandlets get admin Power App instead of get admin flow. And here the commandlet that we use and its syntax is different, and the parameters it needs to add an owner into an existing app are different. That's the only difference. Rest of the implementation is pretty standard or straightforward. Now here I would like to pause and see if you have any questions or any comments. Okay, take that as a no. All right, so the reference script, I already posted the link in the chat window, so feel free to grab that and use it. Now there is another type of PowerShell I would like to especially mention. It's called PNP PowerShell. Not many people are familiar with, but it's a really good thing to learn and use, especially if you are a developer or especially if you are a maker. The reason is the out-of-the-box commandlets that come with SharePoint Online or the out-of-the-box commandlets that come with SharePoint On-Prem. Those are good for managing your SharePoint infrastructure. But if you would like to play with the assets inside SharePoint sites, for example, the list, the library, the site columns, the content types, the web parts, then PNP PowerShell is really, really good. It's an open source community-driven initiative, and it allows us to perform complex provisioning and artifact management towards SharePoint. And behind the scene, it uses client-side object model. And you can find more information by going to this particular link. And there are separate modules available for separate version of SharePoint. We have a separate module for online, then SharePoint On-Prem 19, 16, and 13. There is no module available for SharePoint 2010. Some of the best practices you should always follow whenever you're using PowerShell is you should use your test environment to test the PowerShell commands. Don't run your commandlet directly into the production, especially if you're not sure or if you're using it for the first time. And if you're unsure if a particular commandlet, whether it's going to do the appropriate job or the syntax is right or not, then you can also always use -what if parameters towards the end. So this way it will check all the parameters, but it won't actually execute the commandlet. And when you are creating the scripts, make sure you use proper naming convention because a lot of time we forget why we create that script, and having proper naming convention and also having some description at the top will help you to recollect like what this script was supposed to do and how to use this. For example, the script I shared with you, if you go at the top, I have the name I have used is helpful. Like just looking at the name, I know what this particular script is supposed to do. And at the top, I have mentioned what's the intended use, like how to use that and what exactly the script is doing. And if any models I need, that information about that models is also listed. So let's say if someone is totally new and they just would like to understand what exactly is done, then you're basically leaving some nice information for them to follow. And as I mentioned, have a description at the top. And never store credential in the script. I have seen multiple times where a lot of people store credentials inside the script. But if, for example, by mistake, someone uploads that script into a public repository, then you're exposing your credentials that you should never do. There are multiple ways how you can manage the storage of credentials. However, you should never store the credential directly inside the script. So in case, coming back to the first point, first best practice, always use your test environment to try PowerShell commands. In case you would like to learn more about PowerShell modules and you don't have required access, there is a really good program available from Microsoft called Microsoft 365 Developer Program, where you just have to go to this particular link, sign up for the program, and with this program you get a personal Microsoft 365 subscription for free with 25 E5 licenses. Now E5 is the highest level of licenses you can get in Microsoft 365, and this tenant is valid for 90 days, and the account that you will be using will have a global admin access. And after 90 days, if you are using this tenant for personal training and development, Microsoft will graciously increase your trial period for additional 90 days, and they will keep on doing it as long as this program is active and you're using this tenant for personal training and development. I'm personally using a tenant through this program from last 1.5 years. So as long as you follow all the rules, you'll have a personal tenant with E5 licenses where you'll have global admin rights. And the tenant comes with everything except the telephony features. For example, it comes with SharePoint Online, Power Apps, Power Automate, Teams, Planner, and other related Microsoft 365 services. You can also sign up for the free trial as well. In case you would like to get your hands dirty, you can get access to the personal Azure subscription via various ways. And one of the recommended ways is to get via MSDN subscription. If you already have MSDN subscription, go to your MSDN portal, and there you can activate your free Microsoft Azure subscription with some monthly credits. And if you go with MSDN, you don't need to use credit card. You can also sign up for the free trial, where right now Microsoft is giving you $200 of credit for free for first year. And after that, then you will be charged on your credit card. There is another program called Azure for Students, where you don't need a credit card. All you need is a valid EDU account from a participating school or institution. And depending on your country, you get a different credit. Right now in the United States, you're getting $100 of credit. And you can go to this link to find more information about Azure for Students. So hopefully the contents we covered today made you explore PowerShell for Power Apps and Power Automate. And if you don't have access to developer tenant, do check out the Microsoft 365 developer program. So these are the things we covered. What is PowerShell for Power Apps and Power Automate? Why should we use it? How to use it? We'll have demos, and we talk about best practices. And these are the references I use. With that, we come to the end of the talk. I would like to thank organizers and you for attending, for making this conference possible. And these are my contact details in case if you have any future questions. I have my email address listed here. I'm also available on Twitter, LinkedIn. With that, thanks for coming, and do let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Prashant. Any questions? Feel free to leave them in the chat window or reach out to Prashant directly.
And I have also posted my contact details in the chat window.
All right, well, thank you. And thank you everybody for joining.